My wife's work husband pointed to me, to the loser paying for our future. At my wife's work's Christmas party, all eyes were on me. I left without a word. The next morning, my wife's CEO called my wife. The merger is off. Tell your lover to never step foot in this office again. And you should call your husband and start begging. I should have realized something was off when Madison spent 3 hours getting ready for what she called a work party. 3 whole hours. That's not, I'm going to network energy. That's, I'm auditioning for a billionaire husband energy. She claimed it was the Brightwell Capital Christmas Gala, a corporate event that, in her words, could change careers. Translation, it's where overpaid finance people pretend they're at the Met Gala while secretly checking who got promoted and who got Botox. Now, I've seen Madison get ready for date nights, weddings, even funerals, but this? She went full Hollywood, hair in soft curls, smoky eyes, that expensive red dress that looked like it came with a liability waiver. When she stepped out of the bathroom, the mirror gasped. She twirled once and asked, "Do I look okay?" "Okay," I said. "You look like a merger deal. Overvalued and risky." She laughed, a practiced little giggle that used to sound cute when we were broke and in love. Now it sounded rehearsed. At that point, I still thought I was being paranoid. We'd had a rough few months, long work hours, missed dinners, her new project lead role that seemed to involve more cocktails than spreadsheets. But I chalked it up to stress. Corporate America turns everyone into a sociopath by December. We got to the Riverside Grand Ballroom, and immediately I knew this wasn't a party. It was a power parade. Chandeliers glowed like 1,000 judgmental eyes. The air smelled like money, perfume, and quiet desperation. Waiters in tuxedos floated around with champagne flutes that probably cost more than my shoes. Madison's coworkers buzzed around like bees high on bonuses, laughing at nothing and pretending to like each other. I was just there as the accessory. Elijah Reed, compliance officer, human wallpaper. My job title alone was an instant social repellent. Nobody at a Christmas gala wants to hang out with the guy who reads legal disclosures for fun. Madison introduced me around, her tone the same one people use when they show off a rescue dog. He's shy, but harmless. And then I saw him, Trent Holloway. The name alone makes you picture a man who says synergy unironically. He was tall, tan, and dressed like he had a personal lighting crew. That's Madison's work husband. Yeah, she actually called him that once, half joking. Apparently, HR never got the memo that adultery jokes aren't morale boosters. Trent strutted toward us like he owned the building. "Madison, there's my superstar." He hugged her, a little too long, and gave me a nod like I was the Uber driver. "Trent, this is my husband, Eli," Madison said, smiling too wide. "Ah, the famous Eli," he said, shaking my hand. "The man funding all our late nights." I grinned. "Happy to sponsor your team bonding." He laughed, the kind of laugh that told me he thought he'd won something. And honestly, at that point, maybe he had. Dinner started. Madison sat next to Trent, of course, because it's just assigned seating. I got stuck beside some guy from HR who kept talking about his fantasy football league like it was the stock market. I tuned him out, watching Madison and Trent whisper between bites of filet mignon. Every so often, she'd touch his arm, and I'd remind myself that murder was still technically illegal. The room was glitter and pretense. People clinked glasses and faked interest in each other's lives. A band played something jazzy in the background, the kind of music that makes you feel like you're supposed to be richer than you are. Then dessert arrived, tiny pretentious chocolate spheres that tasted like disappointment. Someone handed Trent the microphone. Big mistake. You could practically see his ego inflating. He stood up, champagne in hand, grinning like a man about to propose to himself. "Everyone," he said, tapping the glass, "I just want to take a moment to appreciate my incredible team, especially Madison, who's been my rock through this merger." The crowd oh'd. Madison blushed like she was accepting an Oscar. Then he added, "And let's not forget her husband, Eli, for being such a supportive guy. You know, the loser paying for our future." The room exploded in laughter. People nearly choked on their wine. Even the waiter cracked a smile. And Madison, my wife, laughed too. Not the nervous kind of laugh people do when they're caught off guard. No. She laughed like she'd been waiting for the punchline all night. Something inside me went still. I didn't get angry. I didn't throw my drink or make a scene. I just felt this weird, cold clarity, like I'd suddenly stepped outside my body to watch my own humiliation in forecon. When the laughter finally died, I lifted my glass slightly and said one word: classy. Then I stood up, pushed my chair back, and walked out. No yelling, no drama, just the quiet sound of my shoes against the marble floor and the faint echo of people still laughing behind me. Outside, the December air hit like a slap. The Riverside Grand sparkled behind me, all lights and lies. I stood there for a second, watching limos pull up, couples taking photos, everyone pretending to love their lives. My breath fogged in the air like smoke from a funeral. I wasn't mad yet. That would come later. What I felt was stillness, the kind that comes right before a storm. I got in my car and started the engine. My reflection stared back at me in the rearview mirror. Same guy, different eyes. You know that moment when something snaps inside you, but instead of breaking, it sharpens? That was me. All those little things I'd ignored. Late nights, hidden texts, work trips that didn't add up. They lined up perfectly now, like dominoes finally toppling. And that final toast? That was the push. Madison always said I was too calm. She meant it as a flaw. Turns out it's a weapon. Because calm people don't explode, they plan. By the time I got home, I already knew what I was going to do. See, Madison forgot something about me. I wasn't just a husband with a mortgage and lower back pain. I was the external compliance officer for Brightwell's merger with Ironcrest, the same merger her little lover boy was leading. Every document, every clause, every approval went through me. And somewhere, buried in that mountain of corporate paperwork, was a clause I'd written myself years ago. A tiny, harmless-looking line that required one final signature: mine. Without it, the merger couldn't close. No signature, no payout, and no future for Brightwell or Ironcrest. In short, I was the loser paying for their future, and I'd just decided the future was canceled. When I pulled into our driveway, Madison's text popped up. "Eli, where did you go? It was just a joke." I stared at the screen and typed back, "Yeah, I'll be laughing soon too." Then I deleted it. Silence was better. Silence made people nervous. I walked into the house, still immaculate, still full of her perfume. On the kitchen counter sat the champagne bottle we'd planned to open when the merger closed. I uncorked it, poured a glass, and toasted to myself. "To the loser paying for our future," I muttered, smiling. "Cheers, buddy." The bubbles burned going down to upstairs. Her vanity lights were still on, her perfume bottle tipped over like a casualty. Her jewelry lay scattered, diamonds and deceit. I turned off the light, shut the door, and sat down in my office. The glow from the computer screen filled the room. One login, one digital signature retracted, and just like that, the corporate castle she built her affair on started to crumble. Funny thing about paperwork, it doesn't shout, it whispers. It kills quietly, like good poison. Outside, snow started to fall, soft and unbothered, blanketing the world like a clean slate. By the time she came home, tipsy and glowing, the first cracks were already forming in her shiny world. She kissed my cheek and said, "You left so suddenly. People asked about you." "Did they, Juan?" I said, smiling. "What did you tell them?" "That you weren't feeling well." "Not wrong," I said, and I was sick of pretending. She didn't get it. Not yet. But she would. Because the next morning, when her phone started ringing with panic from her office, and her boss's cheerful voice turned icy, she'd realized that her husband wasn't the loser after all. He was the compliance officer, and he'd just filed for emotional bankruptcy on her entire future. The drive home after the gala was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. More like the kind of silence you get right before a bomb goes off. My mind replayed Trent's toast on loop. "To the loser paying for our future." Every syllable crawled under my skin like bad radio static. People think humiliation is loud. It's not. It's a quiet, surgical cut you feel hours later when you're alone with your steering wheel and your pride bleeding out. I parked the car, stepped into the house, and tossed my jacket on the couch. Madison's heels were by the door, her perfume still hanging in the air like expensive guilt. I went straight to my office, the only room in the house that still felt like mine. While most guys in midlife crises buy motorcycles or start podcasts, I collect leverage. Spreadsheets, contracts, compliance reports, the adult version of sharp knives. I booted up my computer. The glow of the monitor hit me like caffeine for the soul. Madison called once, ignored, and then again declined. By the third call, I turned the phone face down. Her ringtone used to make me smile. Now it sounded like a mosquito I wanted to swat. The thing is, she forgot who I was. Everyone did. They saw me as the quiet husband, the guy who double-checks receipts and corrects grammar in group emails. They didn't realize quiet men are dangerous. We listen, we notice, we remember. And in my case, I remembered everything. Brightwell Capital's merger with Ironcrest Holdings was Madison's golden ticket. She'd been bragging about it for months. Trent says this merger will change everything. She'd say, eyes sparkling like she was quoting scripture. Yeah, it'll change everything, all right, especially once I'm done with it. See, I wasn't just some random spouse on the sidelines. I was the external compliance officer assigned to review and certify every damn document tied to that merger. Buried deep in the 432-page agreement, page 327, paragraph 7, was a clause I'd written back when Brightwell was still trying to look ethical. Final approval contingent upon independent compliance certification. That's corporate speak for, without my signature, this deal dies faster than crypto in a bear market. It's amazing how often arrogance makes people forget fine print. I poured myself a drink, nothing fancy, just bourbon and spite, and opened the compliance folder. I scrolled past endless PDFs until I found the draft marked pending signature, Read E. That tiny blank line with my name next to it had more power than any of those champagne-soaked executives realized. I stared at it, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. One click could collapse a billion-dollar fantasy. Madison used to tell me I wasn't ambitious enough. You don't think big, she'd say. That's the thing about people like her. They confuse loud for strong. They think real power walks into a room wearing Prada and a fake smile. Real power sits in the dark, holding the pen that decides who gets to keep theirs. I leaned back sipping bourbon. My reflection in the monitor looked calm, too calm. I could feel the edges of a smile forming. This wasn't revenge yet. It was reconnaissance. Step 1, understand the battlefield. Step 2, find the pressure points. Step 3, press. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from my buddy Ty, who worked in accounting at Brightwell. Ty's one of those guys who knows everything before HR does. His text read, "Heard about the toast. What a clown. You good?" I replied, "Better than I've been in years," because I knew something they didn't. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about symmetry. They humiliated me in public. I'd returned the favor in paperwork. I opened my email and typed out a message to Victor Calder, CEO of Eastmark Holdings, the parent company funding the merger. The man's basically capitalism in a $3,000 suit. I'd only met him once, but I knew he respected two things: control and competence. Subject, urgent, compliance review. Conflict, body. Mr. Calder, I've identified a personal conflict of interest involving the Brightwell Ironcrest integration. Request immediate call to discuss withdrawal of certification. Regards, Elijah Reed. I hovered over send for a moment. Then I thought about Trent's smug grin, the way Madison laughed, and I hit send like I was firing a bullet. It took Calder 5 minutes to reply. Call in 5. 5 minutes later, my phone lit up. His voice was gravel and money. You said urgent? Yes, sir. I'm withdrawing my compliance signature from the Brightwell Ironcrest merger. He didn't even ask why at first. You could practically hear him flipping through mental files. Then, after a beat, reason? Personal conflict of interest, I said. Silence, then a low hum of understanding. The man's been in business long enough to know what that really meant. Names? Trent Holloway, Madison Reed. He exhaled through his nose. Understood. Consider it handled. Just like that. No drama, no 20-minute explanation, just calm execution. That's the difference between power and noise. Power doesn't need to shout. It delegates. When I hung up, I laughed for the first time all night. A small, dangerous laugh. The kind that makes the dog tilt its head like, "You good, man?" I sat there swirling the bourbon, picturing the chain reaction. Victor would call Brightwell's CEO, who'd call legal, who'd call HR, who'd call Trent. By the time Madison woke up tomorrow, her lover boy's career would be a smudge on a compliance report. And all because the loser decided to pay attention. The irony was delicious. Around 2 a.m., I finally went upstairs. Madison was asleep, one hand flopped across my side of the bed like a territorial flag. Her phone buzzed twice before I reached it. Trent. I glanced at the preview. You were amazing tonight. Couldn't have done it without you. I smiled. You sure won't do it without her tomorrow? I whispered, putting the phone back down. She stirred and mumbled, Eli? Yeah? Where'd you go tonight? Just needed air, she sighed. You didn't like the toast, huh? It was memorable. She turned over. It was just a joke. Sure, I said softly. Everyone's laughing. She fell back asleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting down the hours until daylight like a kid waiting for Christmas, except Santa was bringing layoffs. When morning hit, I brewed coffee like it was a religious ritual. Madison came down in her robe, humming, phone in hand. Big day, she said. The merger announcement goes live today. Trent says the press release drops at 9 sharp. I smiled behind my mug. He's going to have quite a morning. She laughed. Don't be jealous, Eli. It's just business. Yeah, I said. That's what I love about business. It's fair. She kissed my cheek on autopilot, grabbed her purse, and left. I watched her drive away, the red dress from last night hanging off the back seat like a warning flag. The second her car turned the corner, I opened my inbox. New email from Calder's assistant. Compliance withdrawal acknowledged, audit to commence immediately. Attached was a short internal memo marked confidential. Notify Brightwell Legal and HR of immediate freeze on merger activities pending compliance review. Translation: panic. By 9:15, my phone started lighting up like a Christmas tree. Ty texted again. Bro, what did you do? The merger's on hold. Trent looks like he's seen a ghost. I typed back, tell him ghosts are real. I'm one of them. Because that's what I'd been all along. The invisible man at the table, the one they forgot, could see everything. They mocked the guy in the shadows, not realizing the shadows worked for him. I leaned back in my chair, watching the morning sunlight crawl across my desk. There was something poetic about it. Last night, they toasted under chandeliers. Today, they'd squint under fluorescent lights while HR asked questions nobody wants to answer. People always mistake patience for weakness. But patience is just revenge on layaway. I opened my Spotify and played a little jazz, something smooth, fitting for the occasion. Then I checked my calendar. I had no meetings today, no obligations, no reason to rush. Just a front row seat to a corporate meltdown. At noon, Madison texted me. Can you believe it? Trent said there's a sudden compliance audit. Everyone's losing it. I typed, crazy world. Then muted her thread. Some men blow up relationships with screaming matches or slam doors. I prefer signatures and clauses. Clean, silent, permanent. By the time she got home tonight, her perfect little world would already be halfway through the shredder. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally understand what kind of man she'd mocked. Because I wasn't the loser paying for their future. I was the man writing the terms and conditions of it. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Brightwell Capital was already in meltdown mode. I didn't even need to check the news. You could feel it in the air. The kind of tension that makes your phone vibrate with texts from people who never remembered your birthday before. The first call came from Victor Calder, the big man himself, the guy whose company, Eastmark Holdings, was bankrolling the Brightwell Ironcrest merger. If CEOs had spirit animals, his would be a bald eagle with a law degree. My phone buzzed, and I picked up on the second ring. Calder, I greeted, pretending I hadn't been waiting for this exact moment, with the calm of a monk and the grin of a wolf. He didn't waste time. You said urgent last night. What's the situation? I'm withdrawing my compliance signature on the Brightwell Ironcrest deal. I said, casually, like I was canceling a dinner reservation. He went quiet. I could practically hear him running a mental background check on my soul. Reason? He asked finally, his tone all business, but with a faint edge of curiosity. Personal conflict of interest. There was another pause. Short, sharp, and heavy. The kind of silence that only men who run billion-dollar empires can pull off. Then Calder's voice dropped half an octave. Names? Trent Holloway, Madison Reed. He didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. Calder had been in the corporate trenches long enough to translate that code instantly. A subordinate sleeping with the compliance officer's wife? That's not gossip. That's a corporate homicide waiting to happen. Understood, he said simply. Consider it handled. And just like that, the wheels started turning. I could imagine the chain reaction. Calder's assistant pinging Brightwell's CEO, Elaine Grayson, at 9:00 sharp. Elaine choking on her latte at 9:06. Legal getting the emergency memo at 9:10. HR checking security footage by 9:12, and Trent Holloway sweating through his overpriced suit by 9:15. Meanwhile, I was sitting at my kitchen counter eating scrambled eggs, humming Sinatra. The day had that electric charge, the kind of energy you get when karma finally decides to clock in for work. Upstairs, Madison was curling her hair like she hadn't just starred in the biggest HR disaster of the quarter. She kissed me goodbye, smelling like perfume and denial. Don't wait up, she chirped. I wouldn't dream of it, I muttered into my coffee. When she drove off, I opened my email. Calder had already copied me on a confidential internal message. Subject line, urgent, compliance interruption. It was short, efficient, and ruthless. All merger activities are to be halted pending audit review. Please ensure all parties remain cooperative and transparent. Any non-disclosure or conflict will be escalated immediately. Translation, lock the doors, pull the files, and find the body. By 10 a.m., my friend Ty from accounting was live texting me the chaos like a war correspondent. Ty, bro, the merger call just got canceled. HR looks like they're preparing for a firing squad. Me, save me a front row seat. Ty, Trent's pacing the hallway. He keeps saying it's a misunderstanding. Me, yeah, like OJ misunderstood that glove. Apparently, HR had already requested Trent's travel expense reports and Madison's calendar entries. Karen O'Donnell, Brightwell's HR director, was leading the charge. And Karen is a legend. She's 58, has a stare that can peel wallpaper, and a memory sharper than a subpoena. Once she smells scandal, someone's career dies by lunchtime. Around noon, Ty sent another text. HR called Trent in. Dude looked like he was walking into his own funeral. I smiled. Rest in paperwork, buddy. I could practically see it unfolding. Trent swaggering into the HR conference room, trying to charm his way through disaster, only to find Karen waiting behind a neat stack of evidence. Receipts, hotel invoices, time-stamped keycard swipes, and a few screenshots that could make a priest swear. Care to explain these, Mr. Holloway? She'd ask, sliding a folder across the table. Team meetings? Team meetings at the Hyatt Regency in Chicago? During the week you were supposedly in Dallas? And the man would start sweating like he was being slow roasted. Ty texted again at 2:03. Security just walked him out. No box, no goodbye, just gone. Merry freaking Christmas. I leaned back in my chair and laughed. Not a crazy laugh, not an evil one. Just the kind of laugh that comes from watching the universe finally balance its books. Trent had spent months building this shiny public image. The confident merger guy, the rising star, the office favorite. But in corporate America, your reputation is like an elevator. One wrong floor, and it plummets faster than Bitcoin in a panic sale. Meanwhile, Madison's phone started lighting up on the kitchen counter where she'd left it. First call from an unknown number, then another, then Elaine Grayson, her CEO. The woman's voice could cut glass. I didn't answer, but I could imagine that call. Elaine, Madison, the merger is off. Trent Holloway is terminated. HR will contact you for an internal review. You should probably call your husband and start begging. Click. I sat there sipping my coffee, watching her phone buzz like a trapped bee. There's something beautiful about poetic timing, the kind that happens when people who thought they were untouchable suddenly realize gravity still applies to them. By 3 p.m., Ty sent another update. They're doing a full audit. Elaine's screaming about compliance sabotage. Half the board's in panic mode. I replied, tell her I prefer strategic ethical intervention. He texted back a laughing emoji and added, HR's whispering your name like it's Voldemort's. Good, let them. Because for the first time in a long while, people at Brightwell were remembering who Elijah Reed was. Not Madison's husband, not the quiet compliance guy, the gatekeeper, the signature that decides whether their billion-dollar dreams live or die. By the time Madison came home, she looked like a ghost in designer heels. Her lipstick was smudged and her hands were shaking like she'd been holding a live wire. They fired Trent, she said, voice cracking. They said it's compliance issues. Do you know anything about this? I set my mug down and tilted my head. Maybe check the dining table. Her brow furrowed. What? There's something for you. She turned toward the table and saw it. A single key sitting on a white envelope with her name written in my handwriting. She opened the note. It read, all further communication will be through counsel. You'll need this. Her face drained of color. What is this, Eli? Just a little Christmas preparation. She ran to my office, our office, technically, stormed past my desk, and found the black lockbox tucked behind my law books. It had been there for months. She just never noticed because she never looked at anything that didn't sparkle. I heard the click, the pause, and then the sound every betrayed husband dreams of, gasp sharp enough to break glass. Then came the scream. Inside the lockbox was my private archive, every lie she'd told neatly indexed like evidence in a courtroom. Copies of her emails to Trent, screenshots of messages, hotel receipts, time-stamped photos. I'd even included a printed transcript of her phone calls with him, courtesy of my friend in IT security. At the bottom of the box was a thick manila folder marked Separation Agreement. Signed, dated, notarized. I even left her the house. Because I'm generous like that. The final note on top read, you said you wanted freedom. Consider it your Christmas bonus. When she stumbled out of the office, mascara streaking down her face like war paint, I was stirring hot cocoa in the kitchen. I looked up. Cocoa? You ruined him, she sobbed. You destroyed his career. No, I said calmly, sipping the cocoa. He destroyed his career when he decided to play house with a compliance officer's wife and couldn't keep his mouth shut at the company Christmas party. Her lip trembled. You can't just destroy a billion-dollar merger because you're hurt. Oh, I didn't destroy it, I said. I disinfected it. Her phone buzzed again. HR this time. I nodded toward it. You should answer that. She stared at me, terrified. They said they want me in for a final review meeting tomorrow. That's corporate for pack your box, I said, finishing my cocoa. I'd start with your mug. She tried to plead, reaching for me, tears streaming down. Please, Eli, can't we talk? I met her eyes. Oh, we're talking. You just don't like the topic. She stood there, frozen, realizing she'd become a casualty in the same game she thought she was winning. That was the moment I learned something valuable. Revenge isn't rage, it's precision. There's something about the sound of a phone vibrating nonstop that's deeply satisfying when you know you're the reason it's happening. Madison's phone had been doing that since sunrise. Buzz, 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 like a panicked bee trapped in a bottle of guilt. I didn't even need to look at the screen to know who it was. Brightwell's HR department was working overtime. And for once, not because of stolen office snacks or printer drama. Around noon, my friend Ty from accounting texted again. The man has the soul of TMZ and the discretion of a reality show contestant. Dude, merger on hold. People are freaking out. Trent looks like he swallowed a stapler. I leaned back in my chair, stirred my coffee, and smiled. Corporate Christmas came early, and I said out loud to no one. Then I texted Ty back. Get popcorn. This is going to be a long day. He replied instantly. Karen from HR is already in interrogation mode. Ah, Karen O'Donnell. The human lie detector. 58, recently divorced, allergic to bullshit, and fueled by black coffee and righteous fury. The woman runs the HR floor like a medieval dungeon. If you walk in with secrets, you're not walking out with a job. She's the reason grown men suddenly remembered mandatory compliance training after ignoring it for 3 years. I could picture it perfectly. Trent, still trying to look confident, strutting into HR with that fake swagger. The kind that says, I read 2 leadership books and think I'm unstoppable. He'd probably loosened his tie just enough to look casual. Rookie move. Karen would have had his entire expense history printed, highlighted, and tabbed before he even sat down. Mr. Holloway, she'd begin, glasses sliding down her nose like judgment itself. We have a few inconsistencies to review. Trent would smile, the kind of smile only men with too much privilege and too little self-awareness can pull off. Sure thing, just a misunderstanding, I'm sure. Karen would open a folder thicker than his sense of invincibility. Hotel receipts, Mr. Holloway. Hyatt Regency, Chicago, June 14th. But you billed the company for a Dallas trip that same week. Can you explain that? I had to fly out unexpectedly, last minute meeting. Mm-hmm, she'd hum, tapping her pen. And Madison Reed was listed on the same room reservation, another last minute meeting. At that point, even Trent's cologne couldn't cover the smell of panic. HR doesn't yell. They don't need to. They let the silence do the strangling. By 1:30 p.m., Ty sent another update. Karen pulled the security logs, cross-referencing card swipes, dudes sweating bullets. Then 15 minutes later, they brought in legal. HR meeting turned into full-blown inquisition. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the champagne glass, the laughter, the way Madison's hand rested on his arm like she'd found her new favorite accessory. Yeah, sympathy denied. By 2 p.m., Ty's final message came in. Security just escorted him out. No box, no goodbye, just a sad little walk of shame. I laughed so hard, I nearly spilled my coffee. Merry freaking Christmas, Trent, I said. HR's miracle came true. Now, Sesh, Brightwell's corporate culture loved its drama, but this was a full-blown Hallmark special with subpoenas. By 3 p.m., Slack channels were lighting up with confidential messages being forwarded faster than a chain email from 2002. Everyone pretended not to know what was happening while knowing exactly what was happening. Madison's phone buzzed again. This time it was her CEO, Elaine Grayson. If Karen O'Donnell was the executioner, Elaine was the queen with the guillotine. Elaine doesn't speak softly. She commands. She doesn't say good morning, she says, results. The woman runs on caffeine, fear, and quarterly profits. I didn't answer Madison's phone, but I could practically write the transcript in my head. Elaine, Mary, she'd start, trying that sugar-sweet tone she uses when she's in trouble. Madison, the merger is off. What? Why? You can thank your lover. He's been escorted out. Compliance flagged multiple conflicts of interest, and you're part of the review. Elaine, I swear I didn't. Stop. Save it. Legal's involved. HR will contact you in the morning. And if you're smart, you'll start calling your husband and begging. Click. End of conversation. Madison would just stand there, phone still in hand as her world caught fire. While she dealt with corporate Armageddon, I was making myself a grilled cheese sandwich and enjoying the quiet. Revenge doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's just butter sizzling on a pan while chaos screams elsewhere. The funny part? HR didn't even know how deep the rabbit hole went. I'd been quietly collecting data for months, ever since Madison started working late 3 nights a week and her calendar conveniently disappeared every time I walked past her laptop. She thought I was oblivious. Nah. I was building a case file that could make the FBI nod in approval. By the time Ty called me later that afternoon, Brightwell was in full crisis mode. Bro, I'm not even exaggerating, he said, breathless from laughter. Trent's name is already gone from the company directory. IT revoked his access before he made it to the elevator. That's efficiency, I said. You gotta respect it. And get this, someone in legal said the compliance clause you wrote is what saved Eastmark millions. Calder called it the smartest safety net in merger history. You're basically trending internally. Well, I said, taking another bite of grilled cheese. It's about time people start appreciating my paperwork. He laughed. You're a legend, man. Everyone's saying, don't piss off the compliance guy. Aw, damn right, I said. We're quiet until we're not. After hanging up, I went upstairs. Madison was in our bedroom, pacing like a trapped ghost. Her laptop was open, dozens of unread messages flashing across the screen. She looked up when I walked in. They fired Trent, she said, voice trembling. They said it's compliance related. Do you know anything about this? Maybe, I said, keeping my tone casual. Maybe not. You should check the dining table. The dining table? She frowned, confused. Why? There's something for you. She stormed off, heels clicking like gunfire, and I followed at a leisurely pace. She found the key and the note. Her face twisted. What is this? Open it, I said. When she did, the lockbox sang like a choir of receipts. She froze, hand trembling as she flipped through file after file. Emails, photos, transaction logs, all neatly labeled. At the bottom, that final note, you said you wanted freedom. Consider it your Christmas bonus. The scream that came next could have cracked a wine glass. You set me up, she sobbed. I tilted my head. No, Madison, you set yourself up. I just provided better documentation. You ruined everything, she shouted. I smiled. No, sweetheart. I organized everything. Her phone buzzed again. Elaine. She didn't answer. She just stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. Most people never look closely at the quiet man until he's signing their obituary in fine print. You can't destroy a $1 billion merger just because you're hurt, she finally yelled. I didn't destroy it, I said. I disinfected it. Her face contorted, rage and fear wrestling behind her eyes. You're insane. No, I said calmly. I'm thorough. For a moment, she looked like she might throw something, but she didn't. She just stood there, breathing hard, realizing that every step she'd taken, every late night, every lie, every business trip, had led her right here, to me, and my documentation. Elaine wants me in for a final review meeting, she whispered finally. That's corporate for pack your box, I said. I'd start with your mug. She slumped onto a chair, mascara streaking like road maps of regret. I poured myself another coffee because why not? It was turning out to be a productive day. Funny thing is, I didn't feel joy, not exactly, just completion, like finishing a puzzle where every piece was betrayal. I'd been patient, methodical, precise. People always said I lacked ambition. Turns out I just had different goals. That night, when I finally lay down, the house was quiet. Madison slept fitfully beside me, mumbling apologies to people who'd already stopped caring. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about Trent, how he must have looked handing over his key card to security. The same guy who once toasted to the loser paying for our future was now the punchline of a cautionary tale. And somewhere in the HR department, Karen O'Donnell probably closed her final report, sipped her coffee, and muttered, "Merry Christmas" to me. Because in the end, it wasn't just my revenge. It was HR's Christmas miracle. If guilt had a sound, it would be the silence that filled my house that afternoon. The kind of silence that buzzed in your ears, heavy with all the words that were about to explode. Madison sat on the couch in our living room like a crashed computer. Pretty exterior, zero response. She hadn't said a thing since her call with HR. Even the dog Winston kept his distance, like he knew his human privileges were temporarily suspended. She looked up when I walked in, eyes red, hands trembling around her phone. They fired Trent, she said again, because apparently she thought if she repeated it enough times, the universe might reverse it. They said it's compliance issues. Eli, please, do you know anything about this? I nodded toward the dining table. Maybe check there. Her head tilted, confused. What? The table. You'll find something for you. She frowned, walked over and found it. A small brass key sitting on a folded note with her name written neatly on top. She blinked. What's this? Open it, I said, my tone calm, casual. You know, the way you sound when you're about to detonate someone's entire emotional infrastructure. She read the note first. All further communication will be through counsel. You'll need this. I watched her confusion twist into dread. Counsel? She repeated softly. Then she looked at me and her voice cracked. Eli, what did you do? Just some overdue filing. She rushed toward my office, that key clutched in her shaking hand. I followed at a slow, measured pace, the way a lawyer walks into a courtroom when he already knows the verdict. My office was exactly how I liked it. Clean, organized, and mildly intimidating. She darted straight to the bookshelf, scanning like a bloodhound until she spotted the black lockbox tucked between my old law journals. It was a modest little thing. Matte finish, combination latch, nothing fancy. But to me, it was the holy grail of patience. She inserted the key, clicked it open, and froze. For a moment, there was no sound, just the faint hum of the ceiling fan, the ticking clock, and her breathing, sharp, shallow, ragged. Then she let out a sound halfway between a gasp and a scream. Inside the lockbox was every lie she'd ever told, neatly categorized and printed on high-grade paper. Emails, screenshots, receipts, time-stamped photos, credit card statements showing business dinners that apparently took place in five-star hotel bars. Even a copy of the Hyatt invoice where she'd used our joint card, which, for the record, was bold. At the bottom was a large, neatly labeled manila folder marked Separation Agreement. I drafted it months ago, back when I first got suspicious but wasn't ready to confront her. It was fair, all things considered. She got the house, the car, and enough cash to start over. I got peace and legal closure, a bargain, really. And then there was the final note, the cherry on top. In my handwriting, you said you wanted freedom. Consider it your Christmas bonus. When she found that, her face crumpled like paper left out in the rain. She stammered. You've been collecting this? For how long? About as long as you've been collecting excuses, I said, taking a seat at my desk. I figured if you were going to build a future with someone else, I should at least make sure the paperwork matched. She blinked, tears spilling down. You can't, this is private. These are personal. I cut her off. Madison, you CC'd your work email on half of these. That's not personal, that's idiotic. Her face flushed. You ruined his life, Eli. No, I said, standing slowly. He ruined his life when he opened his mouth at that Christmas party and decided to turn me into a punchline. I just finished the paperwork. She shook her head, hands trembling over the lockbox like she was hoping it would vanish if she looked away. You're a monster. I smiled faintly. No, Madison. I'm the monster you made efficient. That broke her. She sank to her knees beside the desk, sobbing, clutching the folder like it was a lifeline. I didn't mean for it to go this far. He made me feel, spare me the Lifetime movie monologue, I said. You made a choice. Multiple times, apparently. The first time could have been a mistake. The fifth was a strategy. She looked up, mascara streaking down her cheeks like a roadmap to regret. What happens now? I shrugged. You sign, you move out. I contact legal in the morning to finalize. I'll even give you a few months' cushion to figure out where to land. Generosity's kind of my thing, remember? Her jaw clenched. You're enjoying this. Enjoying? I repeated, tilting my head. No, this isn't enjoyment. This is balance. She buried her face in her hands. You can't just throw me away like this. Sure I can, I said quietly. You threw us away first. I'm just making it official. For a few seconds, but neither of us spoke. The air between us felt heavier than gravity. Finally, she whispered, Eli, I'm sorry. I nodded. You are. Unfortunately, that doesn't reverse mergers, marriages, or stupidity. Her sobs got quieter, smaller, the sound of someone realizing the fight was over. She looked around the office, at the framed certificates on my wall, the clean lines, the meticulous order. You planned all this, she murmured. Of course I did, I said. You don't go into battle without knowing where your opponent hides her weapons. I'm not your enemy, she said softly. I smiled without warmth. Then maybe you should have acted like an ally. I walked past her and opened the blinds. Sunlight poured into the room, bright and golden, bouncing off the polished wood desk. It hit her face, made her flinch. Maybe it burned. Truth tends to do that. You don't understand, she said, voice cracking. I loved you. I turned back, leaned against the desk, and crossed my arms. You loved the comfort, the image, the stability. The man who paid for your designer guilt trips and smiled through your lies. You didn't love me. You loved the idea of not having to work for what you wanted. That's not true, she whispered. Then why was I the punchline at your party? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because in her mind, she'd already rewritten the story where I was the boring husband and Trent was the exciting escape. But reality has a nasty habit of crashing the narrative. Her phone rang again. Elaine Grayson. I pointed to it. You should take that. She hesitated, then picked up with a shaky hand. Elaine? Her voice was barely a whisper. Yeah, I understand. Of course, I'll come in tomorrow morning. When she hung up, she looked even smaller than before. They're doing a final review. They said I should bring all company property and personal belongings. Ah, I said, nodding. That's corporate language for pack your stuff and don't steal the stapler. She stared at me, eyes empty. You're enjoying this power trip. Power trip? I laughed softly. No, Madison. I've always had power. You just never noticed because I didn't use it. I picked up the lockbox, closed it gently, and placed it on the desk. Keep this. Consider it a souvenir from your career's final chapter. She glared through her tears. You'll regret this. I doubt it, I said. I document everything. Regret requires uncertainty. When I left the office, she stayed there on the floor, surrounded by evidence of her own undoing. Every sound in the house felt louder. The creak of the stairs, the faint clink of the lockbox lid closing, the muffled sob that followed. I made myself hot cocoa because coffee felt too celebratory. Cocoa was quieter, more reflective, the drink of someone who'd won a war but still had paperwork to file afterward. As I sipped, I thought about how this started. One joke, one careless line from a man who thought he was untouchable, one laugh from a woman who forgot who she married, and now here we were. Careers ended, reputations shredded, marriage dissolved, all before dinner. I looked out the kitchen window. Snow had started to fall again, slow and deliberate, covering everything in white. It felt poetic, like the universe was offering me a clean slate. Madison finally emerged from my office, eyes swollen, holding the lockbox like a coffin. Where do I go? She asked weakly. Not my department, I said, but I'm sure HR can give you some resources. She flinched at the word perfect. I never thought you could be this cold, she whispered. I met her gaze evenly, and I never thought you'd make me need to be. She stood there a moment longer, then walked upstairs. Each step creaked under the weight of everything she'd just lost. I took another sip of cocoa and whispered to myself, Merry Christmas, Eli. You finally learned how to let go. And just like that, the quiet settled again. Not guilt, not triumph, just the kind of peace that comes when you finally stop holding the door open for someone who already walked out. The next morning, the house felt like a museum of bad decisions. Everything was neat, quiet, and emotionally radioactive. Madison came down the stairs wearing her office clothes like armor, black pencil skirt, white blouse, pearls that probably belonged to her grandmother or a better version of herself. She'd put effort into her makeup, but her eyes told the truth. No concealer covers fear. Eli, can we talk? She asked, voice cautious, like she was tiptoeing through a minefield that she built herself. I didn't look up from my laptop. We've been doing a lot of talking lately. You just keep mistaking it for silence. She sighed and crossed her arms. I know you're angry. I closed the laptop. Angry? No, Madison. Angry was last night. This morning, I'm caffeinated and strategic. She frowned. You think this is funny, don't you? I think irony's underrated, I said. You wanted a man who could take charge. Congratulations. You married one. Took me a while to realize the battlefield was my own living room, but hey, better late than never. Her lips tightened. You ruined Trent's career. I tilted my head. No, Trent ruined his career when he bragged at a public event about sleeping with his compliance officer's wife. You know how rare that combination is? It's like telling a cop you've been speeding while handing him your license. Her voice rose. You could have handled it privately. Like you handled your affair privately? Or like you handled my dignity publicly, I said. Pick one. She glared, her composure starting to crack. You can't destroy $1 billion merger because you're hurt. I didn't destroy it. I disinfected it, I said calmly, sipping my coffee. There's a big difference. You're impossible. And yet you still said I do. Funny how contracts lose value when people stop reading the fine print. Her phone buzzed again. She jumped, checking the screen, then exhaled shakily. It's HR. They want me to come in early. I nodded. You should answer that. Might be your last scheduled meeting. She hesitated. What are they going to do? Same thing they did to Trent, I said, setting my mug down. Ask you questions you can't answer without crying. She looked like she wanted to throw something, but the fear in her eyes stopped her. You think you're untouchable, don't you? No, Madison, I said softly. I just know where the traps are. You built yours out of ego. I built mine out of documentation. She took a shaky breath. I loved you, I smirked. Past tense noted. Her eyes welled up. Can't we start over? Fix this? I laughed, genuinely laughed. Start over? Madison, this isn't Monopoly. You don't get to pass, go, and collect forgiveness. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand. You're cruel. No, I said. You're just finally seeing what patience looks like when it snaps. The air between us went still, thick with everything we weren't saying. Then she spoke again, quieter this time. I made a mistake. I leaned back, watching her. No, you made a series of choices. Mistakes are when you forget to set the oven timer. Choices are when you schedule hotel rooms under fake names. She flinched. I don't even know who you are anymore. That's because you never bothered to learn, I said. You saw what I provided, not who I was. You wanted comfort, stability, a husband who wouldn't argue when you started disappearing on Thursday nights. You got exactly what you wanted until you didn't. Why didn't you stop me? She whispered. If you knew all this time. I chuckled. Oh, I tried. Remember those little talks I used to start? The ones you brushed off with, you're overthinking, Eli? Turns out I wasn't overthinking. I was pre-documenting. She winced like I'd slapped her. So this was your plan? Humiliate me? No. My plan was to live quietly and drink coffee in peace. You turned it into a case study. The silence stretched so long it started humming. She looked around the kitchen like it could save her. The marble counters, the perfectly arranged fruit bowl, the house she was about to lose. Then she said softly, You know, everyone at work used to think you were boring. I smiled. I am boring until I'm not. Her phone rang again. She ignored it this time. Elaine's going to fire me, isn't she? Final review meeting, Rashai, I said. That's corporate for, we've already printed your termination letter, but want to watch you squirm one last time. She sat down at the counter across from me. You don't have to do this. Do what? Breathe, exist, hold you accountable? I asked. Because apparently I do have to do those things since you didn't. You've changed. Good, I said. Change is healthy. Some of us grow. Some of us just grow reckless. Her face softened. I never wanted to hurt you. Yet here we are, I said. Intentions don't erase actions, Madison. That's not how accountability works. She looked away, her voice barely audible. What are people going to think? About what? That two corporate professionals had a messy divorce? Welcome to LinkedIn, Tragedy Edition. She shot me a glare through her tears. You always have to make a joke. It's my coping mechanism. Keeps me from hiring a billboard. She pressed her palms to her face. I hate this. So does Trent, I said. But hey, at least you'll have something in common again. That one landed. She didn't say anything for a long time after that, just sat there, quiet, staring into nothing. Then she whispered, He's gone. They wiped his ID from the system, revoked his accounts. He texted me last night, said I ruined him. I raised an eyebrow. He's not wrong, though, in fairness, you had help. You don't even feel bad for him? I took a slow sip of my coffee. Do I look like a sympathy subscription service? The man mocked me in public. Actions. Consequences. It's simple math. He lost everything. So did I said. Difference is, I built mine back better. She blinked, realizing for the first time that this wasn't a game she could talk her way out of. She stood up, straightened her blouse, and tried to gather what was left of her dignity. I'll go, she said weakly. Elaine's waiting. I nodded. Good idea. Don't forget your badge. It makes the walk out faster. She stopped by the door and turned back. Eli, please, don't make this uglier than it already is. I smiled faintly. Oh, sweetheart, you already handled that. I'm just doing cleanup. And with that, she left. When the door shut, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The house finally exhaled with me. The quiet wasn't heavy this time. It was peaceful. The kind of peace you get when the storm's over, and all that's left is debris and clarity. A few hours later, Ty called. Dude, I just saw Madison in the lobby. HR escort. She looked like she was walking the Green Mile. I leaned back in my chair. Corporate execution day, huh? Yep, he said, laughing. Elaine's been on a rampage. Trent's name got blacklisted from 3 partner firms already. And Madison? Man, rumor is they're cutting ties completely. No severance. Harsh, I said, though I didn't mean it. Maybe she can start a consulting firm. Betrayal and Associates. Ty burst out laughing. You're evil. I'm efficient, I corrected. After hanging up, I poured myself another cup of coffee. The house felt lighter. The weight was gone. For the first time in months, my hands didn't shake when I held the mug. Around 6, Madison came back. No words, no fight left. She looked smaller somehow, like someone had deflated her ego and replaced it with shame. She dropped a white envelope on the counter. They terminated me, she said flatly. I'm shocked, I said with the kind of tone that could get me an Oscar nomination. They said HR found discrepancies in my expense reports. They're considering pressing charges. I raised an eyebrow. Sounds like they've got a great compliance officer. Her eyes filled again. What am I supposed to do now? I shrugged. Maybe write a book. How to Lose a Husband and a Career in 10 Business Days. She stared at me. You used to be kind. I used to be blind, I corrected. Turns out the cure was paperwork. She sank into a chair, defeated. I don't have anywhere to go. I stood. Then you should start packing while you still live here rent-free. She blinked at me, like she couldn't believe I meant it. You can't mean that. Oh, I do, I said. Well, the house is in your name for now, but that changes in a week once the agreement clears. After that, it's mine again. You can keep the memories, though. They depreciate slower. Her voice cracked. Eli, please. Madison, I interrupted. You burned it down. I'm just sweeping the ashes. For once, she didn't argue. She just nodded, wiped her tears, and walked away. As the door closed behind her, I exhaled long and deep. There was no satisfaction, no triumph, just the strange, quiet relief of closure, the kind of ending you don't celebrate, you document. Because at the end of the day, all I'd really done was enforce compliance, personal, professional, emotional, every box checked. There's something poetic about revenge hitting its stride while you're eating curly fries. Maybe it's the symmetry. Everyone else's life spinning out of control, while yours comes salted, crispy, and served with ketchup. I checked into a hotel that afternoon right after Madison's final review meeting. She hadn't called since, which was fine. I'd had enough crying, shouting, and emotional grandstanding to last me through 3 soap operas and a Taylor Swift album. The hotel was quiet, modern, anonymous. My favorite kind of freedom. I ordered a burger, extra pickles, and turned on the news because why not see the empire burn in high definition? It didn't take long. By evening, the financial ticker was running a new headline. Brightwell Ironcrest merger postponed indefinitely amid compliance concerns. I raised my glass of cola like a man toasting his own patience. There it was, official confirmation that karma reads contracts. My phone buzzed. Ty, of course. Ty. Bro, they're losing it. HR, legal, finance, everyone's crying. Trent's LinkedIn changed to open to work before lunch. Me. Damn. Fast recovery. Ty. Madison's gone too. Restructuring, they said. That's HR for we don't negotiate with cheaters. Me. Efficient. Ty. Elaine's speech this morning was brutal. She actually said, and I quote, integrity isn't optional, it's a job requirement. People clapped, like standing ovation. Me. I told you HR was going to have its Christmas miracle. Ty. Dude, she's your ex. You okay? Me. Ty. I'm eating fries and watching poetic justice unfold. I'm better than okay. The thing about revenge is, people expect fireworks, shouting, dramatic endings. But no one talks about the quiet after, the stillness that comes when your enemies finally trip on their own arrogance and you're left with peace, delicious, debt-free peace. I took a bite of my burger, wiped my hands, and opened my laptop. My inbox was a corporate graveyard. HR thank yous, legal commendations, and one especially satisfying email from Eastmark Holdings compliance team. Mr. Reed, we appreciate your timely intervention and dedication to professional integrity. Please expect contact from our executive team regarding potential consultancy opportunities. Translation. They wanted me to fix the mess Madison and Trent made and get paid to do it. Life has a twisted sense of humor. I leaned back, grinning. Madison once said my job was boring. Compliance isn't sexy, she told me. Yeah? Tell that to the man whose name now scared entire boardrooms. Around 7, Ty texted again. Trent tried calling Elaine. Security escorted him out again. Man's really committed to this walk of shame tour. I laughed so hard I choked on a fry. Corporate persistence, I muttered. You gotta respect the hustle. I flipped onto social media out of curiosity. LinkedIn was buzzing like a funeral. Posts about ethics, accountability, and new beginnings were everywhere. Brightwell employees doing moral gymnastics to pretend they hadn't laughed at Trent's toast 2 nights ago. My favorite post was from one of Madison's coworkers, a woman named Chloe, who'd once complimented me on my tie, but called me quietly irrelevant when she thought I couldn't hear. Her post read, "At Brightwell, we believe integrity is the foundation of progress. Tough times reveal true character." Oh, really, Chloe? You didn't seem too worried about true character when you were filming Trent's speech for Instagram. I clicked like. Petty? Sure. Therapeutic? Absolutely. By 9, my burger was gone, my inbox full of validation, and my phone blissfully silent. Madison hadn't texted once, which meant she was probably drowning in regret or boxed wine. Either way, peace was mine. I switched off the TV and stretched, feeling something I hadn't in months: control. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Probably Madison or her mother, who used to tell me, "You're lucky she chose you." Yeah, about that. Seems like luck finally took my side. I ignored them, ordered room service, eggs, hash browns, coffee, and pulled up the Brightwell intranet from my laptop. I still had access, which meant no one had gotten around to revoking my credentials. Classic. Front page headline: Statement from the board, Brightwell Ironcrest Compliance Review. Below it, a letter full of legal padding and PR spin. Brightwell, capital values integrity and transparency. Effective immediately, Mr. Trent Holloway has been relieved of his duties. The company is reviewing internal processes to ensure future operations meet the highest standards. I snorted. They could have just written, "We bet on the wrong guy, and now the internet hates us." Scrolling down I noticed something even better: my name. Buried in the paragraph, there it was. "We thank External Compliance Officer Elijah Reed for his diligence and commitment to ethical oversight." I nearly spit out my coffee. Brightwell thanking me publicly? That was like the IRS sending you a Christmas card. I screenshotted it immediately. Twice, at noon, I decided to step outside. The air was crisp, cold, clean, the kind of weather that makes you feel like you just deleted a toxic group chat. I walked down to a diner nearby and sat by the window, watching the world spin. When the waitress came over, I ordered fries again. What can I say? Revenge tastes better with grease. While I was waiting, my phone buzzed. Private number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Eli," came Madison's voice, small and raw. "Wow," I said, smiling faintly. "Was starting to think you'd gone corporate ghost." "You destroyed me," she said. "Incorrect," I said, swirling my straw in my soda. "You destroyed you. I just drafted the minutes. I lost my job, my friends, everything. Yeah, that's what happens when you make 'to the loser paying for our future' your mission statement," I said. "The universe invoices you eventually." "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. "Sure you did. You just didn't expect consequences." "You're cruel," she said. "No, Madison, I am consistent." There was silence. I could hear her breathing, uneven, tired. "Are you happy now?" "Happy?" I repeated. "No." "Satisfied?" "Yeah." "Happiness is temporary." "Satisfaction comes with documentation." She sniffed. "You loved me once." "I also loved Blockbuster," I said. "Times change." That ended the call. I finished my fries in silence, watching snow fall outside like a cosmic reset button. When the waitress came to refill my drink, she smiled and said, "You look like a man who just got promoted or divorced." I chuckled, both technically. Back at the hotel, I checked my email again. Another one from Eastmark, this time from Calder's assistant, setting up a meeting. They wanted to discuss my potential long-term involvement in rebuilding the merger under new management. I leaned back and whistled. Madison used to say I'd never be more than a background player in the corporate game. Funny, now I was the referee. The next few days rolled by in calm, deliberate satisfaction. HR wrapped their investigation, legal closed their files, and Trent went dark. His LinkedIn activity vanished, which meant either he deleted it or his Wi-Fi couldn't reach unemployment. Madison sent one last text. "I wish we could have fixed this." I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. Some messages don't need replies, they just need an ending. Ty called again later that week, excitement in his voice. "Bro, guess what? The merger's coming back under new leadership. And guess who the board just appointed as interim compliance director?" I didn't even have to guess. "You, man. Elijah freaking Reed." I smiled. Guess the loser finally paid off. He laughed. Legendary comeback. You're officially Brightwell's redemption arc. Don't tell Madison, I said dryly. She'd call it ironic. I hung up, leaned back, and watched the city lights flicker outside my window. And everything that had crumbled was now rebuilding, without the people who tried to destroy me. And I didn't have to yell, fight, or lose my dignity. I just had to be patient, quiet, and smarter than the chaos. As I scrolled through the day's news, I caught one more headline before closing the laptop. Former executives under review for breach of conduct. Eastmark appoints new oversight board. And there it was, my final confirmation that the storm had passed. I grabbed my jacket, headed downstairs, and walked to the diner again. The waitress smiled when she saw me. Back for fries? Back for peace, I said. The fries are just tradition. Because sometimes victory isn't champagne or fireworks. Sometimes it's a booth by the window, a plate of fries, and the knowledge that everyone who underestimated you is now Googling job openings. And me? I was just getting started. You ever notice how redemption feels better when no one sees it coming? Like, one week you're the boring compliance guy eating reheated pizza in a corner office, and the next, you're the headline everyone pretends to be proud of. That's how January opened for me. Cold air, clean slate, and the faint sound of my enemies realizing they'd been demoted to cautionary tales. By the first Monday of the new year, the merger had been relaunched. Same assets, new leadership, new name. Reed strategic integration, mine. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Has that nice balance of corporate credibility and petty revenge disguised as professionalism. It started with a call from Victor Calder. The man didn't do small talk. He did efficiency. Elijah, he said, voice calm and surgical. You handled that compliance fiasco flawlessly. Thank you, sir, I said, trying not to sound too smug. Just doing my job. He chuckled. If more people did their job the way you did, I'd have fewer lawsuits. We'd like to retain you to oversee the rebuild. Full creative control. Compensation to match. I leaned back in my chair at the hotel desk, watching snow fall past the window. Creative control, I repeated. I like the sound of that. Within a week, I had a new office downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, custom furniture, and a nameplate that read Elijah Reed, Executive Director. Not associate, not consultant, executive. The kind of title that makes your ex's friends choke on their lattes. Brightwell and Ironcrest both came crawling back too. It's funny, corporate apologies sound exactly like romantic ones. We didn't appreciate your contribution enough. We see your value now. Can we start over? Sure, just sign the new deal with my name on top. I wore my best Navy suit that day. The one Madison said made me look too serious. Apparently, too serious gets you 7 figures and a corner office. I stood at the glass conference table while the legal team flipped through documents like nervous students. Every clause, every term, every ounce of leverage flowed through me now. One of the board members, a smug little man who once laughed at Trent's toast, cleared his throat. Mr. Reed, we're delighted you've decided to come back on board. I smiled. Oh, I never left. I just upgraded. The look on his face? Worth more than my signing bonus. News spread fast. Within days, every industry blog and LinkedIn gossip chain was singing the same tune. Elijah Reed returns to lead post-scandal integration. Brightwell's compliance savior spearheads new era of corporate ethics. Corporate journalism really is just fan fiction for people in suits. I didn't mind. Let them romanticize me. I'd earned the mythology, and the best part? Watching people adjust their smiles when they saw me. You know that awkward half-second when someone realizes they used to mock you, but now you sign their checks? That silence? That's the sound of professional revenge sizzling. Even Elaine Grayson, Brightwell's formidable CEO, treated me like royalty now. We met for coffee that week, her assistant fidgeting like a nervous intern beside her. Elaine looked at me over her cup and said, I underestimated you, Elijah. I grinned. That seems to be a recurring theme. She laughed, tight, polite, a little forced. You saved us from a nightmare. If you ever want a seat on the board, I'll let you know, I said, cutting her off gently. Right now, I'm enjoying the view from the top floor. She nodded, clearly annoyed, but smart enough not to push. You can always tell when powerful people realize they're dealing with someone who doesn't need them anymore. They start using words like partnership, and collaboration instead of favor. Later that night, I walked through the empty office alone. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels earned. The city lights glowed below, reflecting off the glass walls like a constellation I owned. This was it, the moment where the loser paying for our future became the man everyone now wanted to shake hands with. I got home late and poured myself a drink. Bourbon. Neat, because victory doesn't need ice. I scrolled through my phone half out of habit and noticed a few familiar names in my notifications. Coworkers who'd ignored me suddenly liking my posts. Old classmates leaving comments like, "Always knew you had it in you, bro." Really? Where were you when I was getting roasted over dessert and betrayal? Then came the text from an unknown number, Madison. I saw the article. Congratulations. I stared at the message for a long minute. No apology, no explanation, just that. I didn't respond. Some ghosts don't deserve closure. By the next morning, my inbox was a circus. Recruiters, investors, corporate vultures pretending to be visionaries. One guy even offered to ghostwrite my leadership journey for Forbes. I told him I'd rather ghostwrite my ex-wife's job references. But the real satisfaction came during my first all-hands meeting. I stood in front of 100 employees, the same ones who'd once looked at me like background noise. Their applause filled the room. Not fake, not polite, actual respect or maybe fear. Either worked for me. "Good morning," I said, adjusting my mic. "I know it's been a rough few months. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of personnel adjustments." A few awkward laughs rippled through the crowd. But the important thing is, we're still here. Stronger, smarter. And we've all learned one universal truth. Compliance isn't just paperwork. It's protection. The room went silent. I smiled. Now let's build something better. And for God's sake, let's keep our personal lives out of the company newsletters. They laughed then, a genuine relieved laugh. I had them. Respect through sarcasm. My specialty. After the meeting, Ty found me in the hallway, grinning like an idiot. "Bro, you're a legend," he said. "Half the staff's scared of you." "Good," I said. "Fear builds discipline." "Seriously, though," he continued, "you pulled off the impossible. Everyone thought you'd disappear after the gala." "Yeah," I said. "Turns out disappearing works better when you come back with a title and a vengeance." We grabbed lunch later. Burgers again, because tradition matters. Between bites, Ty said, "You ever think about calling her? Just to—" "Nope," I said immediately. "I prefer my peace unsupervised." He laughed. "Fair enough." A week later, Brightwell held a press event. Cameras, reporters, investors, the full PR spectacle. Calder stood on stage beside me, giving his big corporate speech about integrity and innovation. I tuned most of it out until he said, "This relaunch wouldn't be possible without the leadership of Elijah Reed." The applause was loud enough to rattle the microphones. I smiled, shaking hands, nodding graciously. Somewhere out there, Madison had to be watching. And if she wasn't, the universe would make sure someone sent her the clip. After the event, I walked outside, the cold wind hitting my face. A reporter followed, mic in hand. "Mr. Reed," she said breathlessly, "how does it feel to go from background consultant to leading one of the largest corporate recoveries of the year?" I smirked. "Feels like good paperwork pays off." She laughed, jotting it down. "Do you have any advice for others dealing with professional betrayal?" I met her gaze. "Yeah," I said. "Always read the fine print, and never underestimate the quiet guy with access to the documents." That line made the article's headline the next morning. I couldn't have scripted it better. By the end of the quarter, profits were up 18%, the merger back on track, and my personal account heavier than my conscience. People who once ghosted my emails were now scheduling coffee catch-ups. One even sent me an invitation to speak at a leadership summit. The topic, resilience in corporate culture. You can't make this stuff up. But my favorite moment came one evening when I was leaving the office. The janitor, an older guy named Luis, stopped me in the hallway. "You the one who fixed all this mess?" he asked. I smiled. "Depends on who you ask." He nodded approvingly. "Good. Too many people think respect comes from talking loud. Sometimes it comes from knowing when to be quiet and wait." That stuck with me. The man had more wisdom in one sentence than half the boardroom combined. As I drove home that night, city lights flickering past, I realized something. Revenge hadn't made me bitter. It had clarified me. The same quiet man they'd mocked had outlasted them all. Not because I yelled louder, but because I played smarter. Because I knew something they didn't. Paperwork always wins. I parked outside my new apartment, modern, minimalist, everything my old life wasn't. I poured myself a glass of wine, leaned against the window, and watched the snow start to fall again, the same way it had that night. I walked out of the gala, full circle. And for the first time, I wasn't the background character in someone else's story. I was the headline, the comeback kid. After months of chaos, betrayal, and boardroom drama, peace didn't come in some grand gesture. It came in the form of good coffee, real coffee, the kind that doesn't taste like burnt ambition or bad marriage counseling. I moved into a sleek downtown apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, and exactly zero emotional baggage. Everything was neutral tones and clean lines because clutter reminds me of people who talk too much. The view overlooked the river, and when the sunlight hit the glass just right, it felt like the city was apologizing for everything it had put me through. That's where I met her, Sofia Morales. The first time I saw her, she was arguing with the barista at the cafe downstairs because they had misspelled her name on a latte for the third time. She held up the cup, indignant. How hard is it to spell Sophia? It's literally 5 letters, not a treasure map. I laughed, which earned me a glare sharp enough to peel paint. But then she smiled, and the glare melted. You think it's funny? She asked. I think you're dangerously close to starting a coffee revolution, I said. Her eyes narrowed. You on their side or mine? Whoever serves the caffeine faster. That got a laugh out of her. And just like that, I was hooked. She had this effortless kind of energy, confident, unfiltered, not the least bit impressed by anyone's LinkedIn title. She was an architect, she told me later, designing luxury apartments for people who couldn't tell marble from laminate. I make places pretty for rich people who never say thank you, she joked. I told her I used to work with people like that. We bonded instantly over shared professional trauma. She didn't care about mergers or compliances or the pile of chaos I'd left behind. She cared about good design, bad movies, and whether I liked my coffee with cream or sarcasm. We started meeting by accident, or maybe fate had good scheduling. Morning runs into each other turned into deliberate lunches. Lunches turned into late-night talks about everything and nothing. The best part? She didn't treat me like a success story or a cautionary tale. Just a person. Elijah Reed, the guy who ordered cappuccinos and made dry jokes about corporate jargon. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I met her at that same cafe. She was sketching something on a napkin, her idea of a stress doodle. What's that? I asked. A house, she said, but not one of those sterile mansions. A real house. Warm lights, messy kitchen, coffee mugs that don't match. Sounds nice, I said. Unrealistic, but nice. She smiled. You know, not everyone lives by spreadsheets, Mr. Compliance. Hey, I'm reformed, I said. These days I only audit people's bad life choices in my head. She sipped her latte, watching me. What happened to you, Elijah? I laughed. How much time do you have? She tilted her head. Enough! So I told her. Not everything. Not the sordid details, not the public humiliation, not the lockbox of betrayal. Just the broad strokes. A marriage that cracked under ego. A career reborn from ashes. A man learning to live without bitterness. She listened. No judgment, no pity, just quiet understanding. When I finished, she said softly, You must have loved her once. Yeah, I said. I loved the idea of her. Turns out, I was married to her marketing department. Sophia laughed, but not the mean kind. The empathetic kind. And now, I took a sip of my coffee, thinking. Now I love mornings that don't start with a fight. I love silence that doesn't feel like punishment. I love peace. She smiled. You're learning how to be alone without being lonely. That's rare. Or maybe I'm just tired, I said. Exhaustion and enlightenment look pretty similar. We sat there until the cafe closed. No drama, no grand gestures, just two people sharing space without pretending to be perfect. It was the kind of peace I didn't realize I'd been craving. By March, things at work were smooth. The merger was profitable, my name was being thrown around in business magazines, and my team was finally stable. For once, no scandals, no late night damage control, no crying executives. Just work that made sense. People respected me now, or feared me. I couldn't tell which, but I didn't mind either way. Even Elaine Grayson had softened up. She sent me a handwritten thank you card, something about gratitude for leadership in times of adversity. Translation: thanks for not suing us into oblivion. I pinned it to my office board as a reminder that vindication comes in cursive too. Meanwhile, Sophia and I grew closer. We'd spend Sunday mornings at the farmer's market, arguing over which vendor sold the best bread. She'd drag me to art galleries. I'd counter with wine tastings. It was domestic, but in a comfortable, non-suffocating way. No secrets, no performance, just connection. One evening, we sat on my balcony, city lights glowing below. She leaned her head on my shoulder and asked, "Do you ever think about her?" I didn't even hesitate. Not really. Not even to hate her? I smiled. That would take effort. I'd rather use that energy making pasta with you. She chuckled. "You're deflecting." "Of course," I said. "It's my love language." She elbowed me lightly. "You know, for a man who rebuilt a corporate empire, you're still kind of a mess." "Yeah," I said. "But at least I'm a profitable mess." She kissed my cheek, and for once, I didn't feel like I needed to earn the moment. It was just good, simple. No subtext, no agenda. Then, one morning, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I ignored it. Then the front desk called. "Mr. Reed," the concierge said, "there's a woman downstairs asking for you. Says she's your wife." I froze mid-sip of my espresso. "Ex-wife," I corrected automatically. "Tell her she's mistaken." "She's very insistent," he said. "Tell her the compliance officer revoked her access," I said, and hung up. Even security laughed. I didn't think about it again. Madison had become a ghost, a memory best left archived. I figured she wanted closure, forgiveness, maybe another chance to explain the unexplainable. But I'd moved on. Not out of revenge, out of evolution. There's a point where you stop fighting the past because you finally realize it can't hit you anymore. That night, Sophia and I sat on the couch watching some terrible reality show where rich people pretended to have problems. She turned to me halfway through an episode about emotional transparency in relationships and said, "You know, you're not bad at this whole moving on thing." I shrugged. I had practice. Corporate scandals are just breakups with spreadsheets. She laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. "God, you're insufferable." "Admit it. You love it." "Maybe," she said. "You're the first man I've met who quotes compliance policy like poetry." "It's a rare skill," I said. "Doesn't get me invited to many parties, though." She smiled softly. "Good. I like my peace." Peace. That word hit different now. It wasn't the absence of noise. It was the presence of calm. The quiet moments where you're not waiting for the next shoe to drop. I finally understood that you can't rebuild your life until you stop checking for fire exits. As months passed, the apartment filled with little pieces of her, a mug collection, plants that refused to die, a stack of architecture books that doubled as coasters. We were building something, not a fairy tale, but something real. Sometimes, when I caught her humming while making breakfast, I'd think about how far I'd come, from the guy who walked out of a Christmas gala humiliated, to the man sipping fresh coffee in a kitchen filled with warmth instead of resentment. That's growth. That's closure. That's life. I still got LinkedIn requests from former coworkers who suddenly wanted to reconnect. I ignored most of them. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding, especially when the view's better from the new one you built yourself. The night before our 1 year anniversary, Sophia handed me a small gift box. Inside was a keychain, a tiny metal tag engraved with the words "Quiet Power." "Thought it fit you," she said. I smiled. "It does, perfectly." Because that's exactly what I'd become. Quiet power. The kind that doesn't yell, doesn't chase, doesn't prove. It just exists, steady and undeniable. The kind that learns that winning isn't about being loud. It's about never needing to be. That night, as we sat on the balcony under a blanket, city lights blinking like approval, I realized something. Revenge fades, but peace sticks around. And I finally had mine. A year after the Brightwell fiasco, I finally understood what winning actually feels like. It's not champagne toasts or viral success stories. It's peace that doesn't ask for permission. It's waking up without checking your phone for disaster. It's knowing the people who once mocked you now lower their voices when your name comes up in meetings. That's real power. Quiet, patient, paper trail approved. My life had gone from survival mode to cruise control. The merger that once nearly tanked the company was now a cash cow. Reed's strategic integration, yeah, still love saying that, had cleared 400 million in its first fiscal year. Reporters called it a comeback story for the books. I called it Tuesday. These days, my calendar wasn't filled with crisis meetings, just golf invites, investor lunches, and the occasional thought leadership interview where someone half my age asked how I managed to stay grounded. Easy. I never forgot that all empires are built on paperwork, and paperwork can end them. Sometimes I'd scroll back through old emails for nostalgia. The ones from Madison's firm, begging for my signature on those doomed merger forms. I'd look at the date, the timestamps, the polite desperation, and smile. That one missing signature was my Mona Lisa. Every masterpiece deserves its frame. Meanwhile, Madison had vanished from the business world entirely. Last I heard, she was living out west, working in event planning for a mid-tier hotel chain. Apparently, she was good at setting up parties, just not surviving the aftermath. I didn't keep tabs, but occasionally someone would mention seeing her LinkedIn profile pop up again, polished and rebranded. Madison Reed, communications specialist. Cute. She'd finally found something she could do without breaking a non-disclosure agreement. And Trent Holloway? Gone. Ghosted by the industry. The man who once bragged about paying for their future couldn't even pay for his own subscription to Relevance. Word around the boardroom was he tried launching a consulting agency, but it folded in 3 months. Turns out, disgraced middle manager isn't a great selling point. It wasn't revenge anymore, it was history. The kind you don't rewrite, you just file away in the lessons learned section. My mornings were simple now. I'd wake up next to Sophia, the smell of coffee already in the air. She had a habit of humming while she brewed it, always some Spanish tune that made the apartment feel alive. I'd step out onto the balcony, stretch, and let the city hum below me. For once, I wasn't chasing anything. I had enough, more than enough. One Saturday morning, I found myself reading an article in Business Weekly. Elijah Reed, the man who made silence profitable. I almost spit out my coffee laughing. They'd turned my quiet vengeance into a motivational myth. The piece painted me like some corporate monk who'd risen from betrayal to billionaire status through stoic wisdom and strategic humility. Sure, that sounds noble. The truth was messier. I didn't rise because I was enlightened. I rose because I was underestimated. Still, I liked the headline. Silence Profitable had a nice ring to it. Maybe I'd trademark it. Sophia walked in, hair tied up, holding 2 mugs. "You're reading about yourself again," she teased. "Research," I said, grinning, trying to understand this mysterious man Business Weekly won't stop talking about. She rolled her eyes. "Mysterious, huh? The same guy who alphabetizes his cereal boxes?" "It's called discipline," I said. "Winners have routines." She sat beside me on the couch, curled her legs under her, and sipped her coffee. "You know," she said softly, "you don't talk much about what happened anymore." "That's because it stopped being important," I said. "The past's a closed case file. I just audit my piece now." "Still sounds lonely sometimes," she said. I looked at her and smiled. Peace and loneliness wear the same coat. The trick is learning who's wearing it today. She smiled back, shaking her head. "You really missed your calling as a philosopher." "Please. Philosophers are broke. Compliance pays." That made her laugh. The kind of laugh that fills the whole room and makes you forget how cold the world can be. It's crazy how healing can sneak up on you when you're not looking for it. I didn't set out to move on. I just stopped staying still. Later that afternoon, we met Ty for lunch. Same diner, same booth by the window, same curly fries, tradition. Ty was doing well. Got promoted after helping me rebuild the post-merger audit team. He wore his success like a new suit, still stiff but proud. "Man," he said, sliding into the booth, "you're like a myth around the office. The quiet Terminator. HR still uses your story during onboarding." "Fantastic," I said. "Nothing says company morale like 'don't cheat on your compliance officer.'" Ty laughed so hard he nearly spilled his soda. They actually made it a case study. Lesson title, The Ethics of Oversight. I raised a fry. To being educational. He toasted with a pickle spear. To petty education. When the waitress brought our order, she smiled at me. You're Elijah Reed, right? I read that article. The man who rebuilt Brightwell. You're kind of famous. Kind of is the best kind, I said. Keeps the stalkers confused. She laughed, walked off, and Ty grinned. You're enjoying this, huh? I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good, I admitted. But it's not about revenge anymore. It's about peace. Stable, boring, delicious peace. Ty nodded. You earned it, man. Yeah, I did. The kind of peace you don't find. You build, document, and notarize. That night, back at home, I poured myself a drink and sat on the balcony again. Sophia was inside sketching something, humming that same tune she always did. I stared out at the skyline, the same city where my life fell apart and somehow rebuilt itself even stronger. A notification buzzed on my phone. LinkedIn message, Madison Reed. I hesitated. Curiosity's a disease, and I was about to relapse. The message was short. I'm sorry, truly, you didn't deserve what I did to you. I hope you're happy now. For a moment, I just looked at it. I didn't feel anger, not pity either, just distance, like reading a note from someone in a past life. I typed a reply, then deleted it. Some doors aren't meant to be reopened, just acknowledged and left shut. I let the message sit unread, permanent proof that forgiveness isn't mandatory. It's optional, with benefits. I turned off my phone and watched the city lights blur. The air was cold, crisp, clean, the same kind of night I'd walked out of that gala a year ago. Funny how circles close when you stop chasing them. Sophia came out, wrapped in a blanket, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. Thinking again? She asked. Always, I said. She sat beside me, tucking herself under my arm. You look peaceful, she said. Like someone who finally won. I smiled. Yeah. But the best part? Nobody even realized when I did. Because that's the thing about real power. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't throw champagne parties or scream success from rooftops. It just sits quietly, sipping coffee, while the world catches up. I'd learned that revenge isn't loud, forgiveness isn't weakness, and silence isn't surrender. Sometimes silence is the loudest victory of all. We sat there watching the skyline, the city glowing like a heartbeat. My heartbeat, steady and unbothered, I thought about Trent's smug grin, Madison's laughter, the way people once looked at me like I was invisible, and how now invisibility was my superpower. No noise, no drama, no need to prove anything, just living, just winning, quietly. Sophia looked up at me. If you could go back, she asked, would you change anything? I thought about it. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the long nights of planning my comeback. Then I shook my head. No, I said, if I changed anything, I wouldn't be here. I'd still be trying to prove something to people who never deserved the proof. She smiled. That's actually kind of profound. Don't tell anyone, I said. It'll ruin my reputation. She laughed and I kissed her hair. You really are impossible, she said. I prefer efficiently complicated. We sat there for a long time, watching the lights flicker below us, saying nothing. And in that silence, I realized something beautiful. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't need validation. I didn't even need to win. I already had. Because the loser they toasted that night, the one paying for their future, yeah, he paid. But he also collected interest. And in the end, every debt got settled.